The primary fear is always of failure. And what happens if, I don't do a good job and the studio fails and we have no resources left. And then I have this big debt that I still have to pay back with, a studio that's failed and I'm signed on for 3 years. And there's so many things that feel like they can go wrong. And often that kind of slows people down, also completely stops them. And that was what happened for me for quite a while. There's some fears that remain, especially when I go out and tell people like, we're gonna make this thing, this can be really cool, hasn't been done before. That's terrifying in itself because now I'm sticking myself on the line, my reputation, my business, my work, and saying this is where I wanna be and I wanna see this area grow and I wanna see it become something bigger and cooler, and that's all part of this. Hey guys, I'm going to show you what it looks like when you start a studio, and I'm going to show you from the ground up. So back here, we're going to basically build out a podcast studio. This is the main part of the studio for actually bringing clients in, giving them consistent content. We're actually going to video the entire thing. We're going to have a video station right about here. This guy is going to be able to go camera A, camera B, so that when we shoot this, we can actually live cut it. That's a really important thing when we're building out a product like this, is to make sure that it's easily manageable, basically. And then, I'm gonna do a little spinneroo. Through here, we have the main studio production area. So as you can see, it's very much under construction right now. We've got Brady working on one of the workhorses that we're gonna be using. We have some of our gear stored already here, but the exciting part for everyone who comes in here, who works here, is this door. This is going to allow us to get gear in and out and make loading gear an actual pleasure. This space here where you can see like the green line, what we're going to do is actually build out a cycle. So a cycle is, think of the swoosh at the bottom of the wall when you have like a draped paper, like for a photo shoot. That's basically what it is, but in a more secure format, from there to there, curved here and curved all along here. That just allows it to actually be lit in an even fashion. Above, what we plan on doing is actually putting out a grid. The grid is actually pretty, how big is that going to be? Okay, it's going to be a no idea size. Huge. And this is where we light the backgrounds from, and eventually we'll be able to set up spotlighting and things like that for music videos and all of that fun stuff. Then we have the washroom and the facilities, and yeah, this is the beginning of AMP Studios. A friend of mine, Brady, and I kind of sat down and we had discussed an idea of building a studio, which was kind of a pipe dream about 6 months ago. We turned it around and really looked at what we could do to make a studio space successful. And part of that was actually understanding that there was part of the studio that became a product. And we knew that we wanted some kind of podcast video element because we saw that the audience kind of really enjoyed that. And so we actually started looking at spaces with the idea of having a podcast studio, which is also a video studio, and then a production unit in the back.
No, you're right. Switcher board. That is tiny.
Is it a little switcher?
Yeah. Tiny.
We're about to run out of battery. I don't know what it does fully, but it's pretty good. I've made studios before and they were, moderately successful. The problem is with them is they always had some ebbs and flow, and the ebb and flow, it can get hard. And so with some talking to different business people, they pointed out that what I needed was a cash injection to allow me to kind of float above those lines of up and downs, and then allow me to have that cash flow to be able to build out something and spend a bit of time to do that. And so we invested in some time in business and learned how to request some capital and build a loan that basically is going to form the studio. I don't know, it's kind of like surreal, because as soon as it landed, I kind of saw the opportunity. I was like, okay, we have this cash, we're going to use it to our advantage, and we started building out AMP Studios from there. We had an idea of a place, we'd already looked at it, and we walked in and told the guy that we would take it. then that was the start of the studio.
We have a bunch of stuff on there. So what I want to do is put all of this into podcast. That window there is a problem, which I think we actually do remember the Stockholm thing? The Oslo thing?
Yep.
Where they build out like a board and stick it in there?
Slides in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we do that.
Yeah.
Because then that
Have
way
the
you
black
like
on the back, so it looks kind of nice on the outside.
we just put the logo on the back.
Well, there you go.
Or we just do black and then make
Yeah.
that the logo.
Logo on the back would be sick.
With the studio, I really wanted to separate myself from the fears and look at it on a pragmatic level. So we actually did a lot of paperwork, and we wrote it down and said, forecasting, if we make this much, if we make this much, if we have this many costs. And we really started to figure out a bit more logically. And some of those fears that we had kind of subsided or just completely disappeared. My kids are young. They're 10 and 14. So I wanted to show them that you have to take risks sometimes. And they can be calculated risks, right? Like obviously if you jump off of a bridge without knowing what's in the water, there's a high damage potential. But if you know that water is really deep, right? And if you know how to land on that water, you can actually start to develop a plan. So jumping off it becomes a little less scary. But I still wanted to show them that if you want to do something different, you have to take risk. And yes, there can be like absolute fear of failure in there. There can be all of that. But the reality is that the kids, they thrive on seeing someone go and try something new. I feel like showing kids that is important because we've all grown up in a society recently that is very much about risk mitigation. And that can be hard because then kids don't take those risks, right? And you know what? Everyone fails, right? And sometimes people fail big, sometimes they fail small. And I just wanted to show them that without that trying, you're never gonna fail, but you're never gonna succeed either. I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. If we wanna light this area, what do you recommend we do as far as, because obviously I don't want to have stands on the floor all the time. These are great, but they're going to get in the way.
Cumbersome and they take up space.
Yeah.
But having an overhead grid with pipe allows you to basically customize lighting for every situation.
How big of a grid are you talking?
I would do 20 by 20.
20 by 20?
My last studio I was in was up 2 flights of stairs or an elevator, and you had to go through a building, and it was kind of a bit of a weird kind of maneuvering. So loading gear and unloading gear became just such a nightmare that I ended up just moving all of my gear back home, stored most of it in my garage, so I could just pull from the garage, which was still a pain because in the garage you have the workout area, you've got the trash, you've got all of those other things that happen there. It just wasn't a studio, it wasn't a place to store the gear. So fast forward to this week. So this is week 1, and we have had 1 shoot so far from here. Lots of gear. Lots of gear. And usually this would take about an hour and a quarter to set up into the truck, move it there, and then basically you'd have setup time there, tear down, come back. The unexpected consequence of having this space is the decompression. And so what I mean by that is after we'd got the gear back, we were able to unload and drop it off on the racks, and then basically chat through the shoot and say, you know, oh, I love this, it was great. I would do this a bit different and change this, or I would, you know, just main kind of things you'd talk about afterwards, just kind of venting, or even just, you know, re-going through the day and organizing it in your brain. And we had that. We sat down, we had a drink together and chatted. And then my videographer and I just kind of left and go back to our homes. What usually happens then is I get back and then start talking to Trish and basically rehashing the whole day, right? So that she gets to hear all these little details. But when I got back, I was more interested in telling her the highlights and then going on to talking about her day and then talking about the kids. And there was this decompression that happened where I was able to leave the set, leave that mindset, and then go back to being a parent and back to being a husband. And that was a weird sensation, a very good sensation, right? And I feel like moving forwards, that's gonna be one of my favorite things. Now it's a strict segregation. One of our friends dropped by the studio, and he's been working in this industry for a very long time, and he gave us this beautiful story of 2 coworkers. And they would go to work, and he would basically carpool with his friend. And so every day he'd come out, and he'd go to work and he'd work this mundane job in a factory. And this guy would go and he'd push a button, the widget would come by, push a button. And over time, this drudgery just kind of wore down on him. And then he would leave that factory just like bedraggled, just really brought down. He'd get home and he'd touch this tree and he'd pause for a moment, have his hand on the tree, and he would just stand there for a moment. And then the door would open to the house and he'd turn around and he'd have a smile on his face. And he'd walk over and he'd greet his family in this just happiness and calmness. And that was something that this coworker over time started to notice. And one day he called him out on it. He's like, hey, I notice that every day when I drop you off, you walk over to the tree, you like lean on it, and then you walk into the house. What's with the tree? And he's like, oh, that's my shit tree. He's like, every day when I get out of my work, no matter what's been done at work, I walk over and I put my hand on that tree. I feel its gnarled branches and its oaky texture. And I just think of all the shit that I've been through the day and I channel it into that tree. And it can take it, it's gnarly, it's strong. And it takes all that and it just draws it out of me. And then when I leave that tree, the shit stays with him. And I can walk into the family and be me, be present, and just enjoy their presence. The shit tree story is a very powerful story because it teaches us the difference between work and life. And we wanted to really exemplify that when we started building the studio. So myself and Brady are the founders of the studio, if you want to call us that. And we had a very clear vision that what we would build here would be something that would be different than what's been in the production world before. We weren't gonna be that high stress stage. We weren't gonna be those people that push our employees to the limit. If anything, we wanted to embody like just everybody has a chance to be who they are on set. And one of those things is on set, there is gonna be problems. There's never no problems on set, actually. And so leaving, we wanted to make sure we embodied the shit tree. And so we're actually gonna probably put a shit tree on the back door here. You guys can't see it because it's on the back, but we'll show it on video. And that back door, we're gonna put a tree. As you leave the studio, put your hand on the shit tree and leave all the shit there. So then when you get back to the family, it's just you and you can share your highlights and enjoyment. And what we're looking to achieve here is a better work-life balance. I had talked to the team and really wanted to have everything done in 3 months. And they kind of looked and went, no. And so here's what we have in week 1 so far. We have a podcast room that has a subfloor that's been created by Phil, my assistant. He's been really working hard to give us a platform that we can put everyone onto. In the actual studio itself, you can see behind me, we've got a couple of racks that we've put up there. That's gonna be for most of the storage. We probably need another 2 more racks, to be honest, but to get started, we'll get there. We've got some more furniture coming in as well. We have a desk that's been placed in here. We have a small workstation that's been put in. And really importantly, a coffee machine that's been installed that actually works, and we're really happy with that. And that's pretty much what we've done in the studio in week 1. It's funny because we actually were talking about it today, and Brady was like, well, that was like a couple of weeks ago, right? And then I informed him that, no, that was last Friday when we moved in here. So time has done this, but done this at the same time. Everything feels like it's taking forever, but it's really not. But everything is moving along.